appreciated in my behalf. You help yourself. Yeah, just feel free to just to get up and get some stuff now, or with whenever. Make yourself at home.
I will allow Pastor Jane to welcome everybody. This is her home.
Rabbi,
I'm a guest. I'm a guest, but
permission givers.
I just want to say that this Faith250 is in the context of something larger that's happening all over the country. As I mentioned a few weeks ago when I was speaking here on Sunday, this is something that was started in Virginia, the area of Washington, D.C., is branched out to over 50 clusters around the country, which includes, I didn't look at the latest number, it was way over 250 congregations of different faith traditions coming together. And not everybody's doing the same thing. There are a number of texts that they suggested. We're going to do one of them today. And depending on how it goes today, we'll decide the next two meetings that we have here. Or Hamidbar is sponsoring these meetings in different communities around the desert for the last month, going forward as well. And each one is different because my idea in taking this material that's being done nationally is to bring it also into denominational perspective. I'm dying to find out, what the more about Methodism. I don't know anything. Like I didn't know.
I've got a lot of here too, so you're not alone. I mean, honestly, like I didn't know much before I went to seminary.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I understand there's a method to the madness, right?
There's certainly a young man.
And
Most people conflated the two.
And it was a few weeks ago, we were meeting at the Unitarian Universalist Church and learned from that tradition. And when we were at St. Paul's next month, we'll be doing things from the Episcopal tradition as well, or very different viewpoints, especially that one because it's Anglican Church here in the United States. Anyway, that's the overall introduction. I'm Rabbi David and our host.
Yes, you are.
No, our host.
Oh, I thought you said and our host.
Oh, no,
Because you're our host.
Go ahead.
Oh, well, we're two co-hosts. Yeah, because you're part of our church, you're part of our extended family, so our space, the world is yours, so vice versa. So I'm Pastor Jane, and I think we'll just briefly just go around the room and just say what congregation we're from. Since we have a couple different things, or what tradition, we find ourselves from, what denominational tradition. I just want to do a little, I told Rabbi David yesterday that it just so happens that my first roommate at Oberlin, she and her husband go to the synagogue of the rabbi who started this in Virginia. So she wrote me, I don't know, a while ago on Facebook, and she's like, have you heard about this Faith250? My rabbi started it, it's really great. I said, by the way, we're going to be doing it. So maybe we'll take a picture. Maybe, Madalena, you can snap a picture of all of us. And I can send that to Ruth and just say, this is but part, because of course, we don't get to see most of our friends on this side of the table. So anyway, I'm the pastor of this church. So why don't we just go around the room and just say your name and what tradition you're from, and we'll get started. You.
Okay. Rosemary Molinaro from United Methodist Church in Palm Springs.
Jim Tipton from UMC, PST.
Bill Farnham from UMC. Jim Hassett, a Methodist.
Kim Harth, Methodist, for 67 years.
Vera Gluer, I was raised in the UUB Church, which is into the United Methodist Church, and I belong to Palm Springs.
Great.
Carrie Allen, a third generation United Methodist.
Very good.
Melinda McInerney, I have my face in the United Disciples of Christ, 40 generations. And I became a Methodist, and I've been with the Methodist Church for 13 years.
Great.
And I'm related.
Great.
I'm Ruth Bisbitman. I'm born in the Methodist parsonage in Paris, Kentucky, and go way back.
Hi, young lady. Next.
Yeah, Stebbins, Or Methodist.
Charles Stebbins, born Baptist, baptized Baptist, and now I guess I'm becoming a Methodist convert.
Right, this baby. All in the process.
How many years?
I'm Rick Strowman, and my father was a Baptist, my mother was a Methodist, so I'm a Methodist.
Got it.
Antoinette Carter, I'm a recent joinee of this church, but born Methodist. My grandfather was a Methodist minister.
Fantastic.
I'm Sandy Ovison, and I'm affiliated with Or Hamidbar Rabbi's Temple.
Fantastic.
And no Methodist in your background?
No.
Not yet.
Yes, Methodist.
Catholic, yes.
Not yet. Okay, I'm gonna just name, because I know on Zoom, everybody's order is different. So I'll just say a name and then you just introduce yourself. And Madalena, why don't we start with you?
Oh, hello. I'm Madalena from Or Hamidbar. Well, I help Rabbi with all this tech stuff.
Great.
I'm really happy to
Thank
be
you.
here today.
And you're talking to us from Spain, right?
Yes.
All right. The miracle of modern technology. Great. Randall.
Okay.
Good morning, Randall Franklin. I was raised Baptist and now becoming Methodist.
Great. Daniel.
Dan Stork, I'm Jewish.
Yay, thank you. Glad you're here. Diane.
Hi, I'm Diane Schlesinger. I'm no religion. I'm all for unification of believers and our one God, source of word and spirit through which we connect.
Or
Fantastic. Terrific. Great. Megan. Is it Megan? Morgan? Megan.
Megan, Jewish or Hamidbar?
Fantastic. Wanda.
I grew up Presbyterian. I'm Wanda Royce, sorry. And I grew up Presbyterian. When I was 18 years old, I became a Methodist, and now I'm a member of the United Methodist Church of Palm Springs. Glad to be here.
Great. Tom.
Hi, Tom Baker. I am Methodist and Zen Buddhist, and I'm calling in from Sonoma County.
All right. Fantastic. Richard.
Jewish Or Hamidbar.
And boy, these my glasses. Okay, Ronald. Is it Ronald? Did I get it right?
Yes.
That's Ron. Ron, can you
Ron.
guess? Oh, you have sound problems. Ron, can you talk now?
Well, that's
Still
Ron.
me.
We'll wait for
Ron is a member of the UCC Bloom in the Desert.
Oh,
Does a
fantastic.
lot with us at Or Hamidbar as well.
Welcome, Ron. Berta. She's muted. Okay. There's Berta, and then there's Bob of Rosemary. Bob that says he's Rosemary.
Well, that's my middle name. No, I'm just kidding.
Got it.
Bob Molinaro, grew up Catholic, and we switched to Methodist, both me and Rosemary, and we belong to the United Methodist Church of Palm Springs.
Fantastic. And last but not least, the Nugents.
Grant, new formed Methodist.
All right.
Oh, I'm sorry. I forgot to say Jewish with Catholic background.
Oh, very good.
I'm Joyce, and I'm a Cradle United Methodist.
Fantastic. All right. So yeah, I think if you guys will just online, put yourself on mute. And then David, I'm gonna let you kind of start things if you like to. And welcome everybody. This is so exciting to have all of you here. You help yourself to snacks. There's restrooms behind here. There's also a shower if you need to. It's really hot. The conversation gets y'all hot, sweaty. Okay.
All right, the whole study is planned to commemorate the 250th anniversary of this country, or the Declaration of Independence at least, in a way that would be meaningful from a faith background and also, I think, unifying. Pastor Jane and I have been talking a lot about programming in this coming year, especially as kind of a film series and how we less point out the things that are wrong with the others and look for situations in this world where people come together for solutions. And this is kind of that. The ultimate goal of the organizers is not only to study together, but also to do some sort of rituals together, whether it's a Thanksgiving dinner or prayer service. We already do in our community quite a bit. We do more in this community than a lot of other places, which is why there's a little bit less excitement about this than there is in different parts of the country. Different parts of the country, this is the first time the congregations are coming together to study anything for them. And we do a lot of that. I mean, interfaith point of view. So I thought we would start with the Declaration of Independence, not the whole thing.
Should we start with a prayer?
Oh, all right. Okay.
And then,
All right.
like, what's a combination?
So
Like our founding fathers may have wanted to start with a prayer, or they might have said, meh, not necessary.
Okay.
But that's part of the conversation.
So in our tradition, there's a blessing,
Which
a
one?
formula for almost every occasion, for food, for smelling, for sights. There's one for when we sit down to study Torah together. Torah not just being the 5 books of Moses, not just being the Hebrew Bible. Torah in the widest sense is knowledge, it's wisdom from our traditions. And like every other blessing in the Jewish tradition, it starts with Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. We give praise, we give thanks to the creator of this world. And then we go on for what? Asher kichanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu, who has sanctified us with the commandment of studying the Torah, of being part of this ongoing tradition. The commandment, the opportunity that we're doing in a very Jewish way to have a direct relationship with the text, not just hearing it from the pulpit, but looking into the text, is something that's been going on for well over 2,000 years in our shared tradition. And we have the great merit, the word zchut, the great
Opportunity.
yeah, but even the reward. Yeah, we're fortunate. We're the great fortune, right, to come together in this long-standing tradition.
The mitzvah.
So
That's not
with that blessing, let us all say it together.
Amen.
Now to the devil. So different ways of doing this, I think, because we're a small enough group, we can go around and take turns reading. If we can kind of go in order, that way there's no, probably if you'd like to pass, just say pass. The next person will read, and maybe we'll try to do it paragraph by paragraph, not to take in too much at one time. You can read through it, and as we're reading, I would suggest that we all kind of digest the text, drink it in, eat it up, and first of all, identify what are we feeling when we read this? What are the things that float to the surface right away? And then we'll hope to see that the different texts that we've chosen, Pastor Jane and I, will intersect and produce something entirely new. So Sandy, may I ask if you begin?
And you can find the Declaration of Independence is probably near the end of the collection of pages. But you'll see like, well, it's okay. I mean, it's just the way the pages came out.
Oh, I see.
The way
They
it got
staple
copied.
differently. Okay.
Yeah, so
All right.
you can find,
A.
it'll say like a Declaration of Independence,
Oh,
1776, find that on one of your pages. Should be there.
you have, did
Everybody
you
have
find
it?
it?
Yeah,
Look for A.
some of you, it's the first page. Mine is a little mixed up, so don't listen to me.
Okay. Yeah.
Listen to the rap. This will be the last one to say that.
We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed.
That whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it, and to institute new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness.
I just wanted to add that this section is not next in the Declaration of Independence. These are just some excerpts, just so you know. We're not reading the whole thing. We're just reading a few excerpts. Okay, very good.
Okay, read the next one.
Oh, I thought that was a new graph because of the dots. Sorry, you go for it.
Okay. I'll try. The history of the present king of Great Britain is a history of repeated injuries and usurpations, all having in direct object the establishment of an absolute tyranny over the states. To prove this, let's facts be submitted to a candid world.
He has excited domestic insurrections amongst us and has endeavored to bring on the inhabitants of our frontiers the merciless Indian savages whose known rule of warfare is an undistinguished destruction of all ages, sexes, and conditions.
Nor have we been wanting in attention to our British brethren. We have warned them from time to time of attempts by their legislature to extend an unwarrantable jurisdiction over us. We have reminded them of the circumstances of our immigration and settlement here. We have appealed to their native justice and magnanimity, and we have conjured them by the ties of our common kindred to disavow these usurpations, which would inevitably interpret our connections and correspondence. They too have been deaf to the voice of justice and consanguinity. We must therefore acquiesce in the necessity which denounces our separation and hold the rest of mankind enemies in war, in peace, friends.
So why don't we take a break now and kind of process? What are the things that stood out in this text? There's a few things I think are.
And those of you online too, just raise your hand or make sure you speak up if you got something to say. All right.
Let me ask, is this text familiar to everybody? People remember this from school? So what would be the difference with how you understood it, if you remember, when you were in school, and how we understand it now? Yeah, Dan, go ahead, Dan.
Yeah, well, actually, most of it, I don't think I've ever read before. The first paragraph is, extremely familiar, but the numbered paragraphs, 29 and 31, I've never seen them before, and lots of things jump out. The claimed kinship, consanguinity, common blood, the calling out of the Indian savages. So there's a racial appeal in it. So the whole thing's a surprise to me.
Others?
It doesn't surprise me because it's starting to happen.
Starting to happen, so you see, okay.
I identified that.
But you see it starting to happen from Washington. Is that what your point is? Yeah.
Yes, we are experiencing these things.
Mhm.
But I think we've been experiencing them in our whole history. Look at the Trail of Tears and driving the Indians out of their native lands and their homelands, taking it away from them and sending them to places that they had no knowledge of. Kind of like what the government's doing when they deport people to countries they've never been involved in before.
What occurs to me is that so far it doesn't speak to the origination of the move to the New World, which was new land. That everything that was done was the expansion of land. And you have to remove the indigenous people. So you had to vilify them. And you had to be mad at the king because he said, don't go beyond Appalachia because we've already got the French and the Spanish out there, and we don't want conflict. None of that is here, and yet it was one of the driving forces.
Of course, we don't know. This is just I mean, what's interesting about the Declaration of Independence for me, is that, yeah, we're real familiar with that first top, but 8/10 of the Declaration of Independence is this and a lot more. So we don't know what else is in. I mean, we do if you read the whole document. It's very long, actually. If you read the whole thing, it's like several pages. But it's all about the complaints against the king and what the king has done to make it untenable for this relationship with Britain to be tolerated anymore. But this is just part of it, so there may be some of that. I don't know, unless you've read the whole Declaration of Independence, I just wanted to say some of those things may be in the full document. They're just not in here.
Yeah, I look forward to finding that out.
Yeah.
But you,
I think the last phrase, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed, I feel that that's a threat now. Like, who is the governed and whose consent?
Sure, but let's talk about, when we look at the document,
Right, no,
as opposed to how it's today.
Oh, okay, I thought,
okay.
I'm
So,
sorry.
all these things will come up, but this is, we're finding our way. We're creating a
sorry.
common language right now, how we're going to move forward. You raised something about land and possession. And I think that very often we don't think in terms of what's the motivation. Liberty, when you're growing up, it's liberty, being free from tyranny. But you're raising an important issue. It was also to have more possession. It was spreading the wealth.
And it was also, as I mentioned in my sermon on Sunday, originally the locks, the rights of humankind, men have right to life, liberty, and property. That was what the original phrase was. Thomas Jefferson changed it at the top to something probably more aspirational: life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. But you'll see in all the grievances, most of it's about not getting to have our stuff, and King has right over telling us what to do with our stuff.
Okay, so there's stuff that, go ahead, please.
No, well, I was moving on to the second paragraph, and I don't know if we're there yet, but I was struck by the right of people to alter or abolish it and to institute a new government. And I was thinking in terms of the uprising at the Capitol, and did they have a right to do that? And maybe they did. I don't know. That this makes me think about that in a different context now. Yeah.
You're talking about January 6th.
Yes.
So the right to protest, possessions, who are the people that are governed by this today? Is it inclusive? This seems to be rather exclusive, right? Excluding certain people. We know, of course, that slaves, African Americans, were not included in any of this. So these are the things that are coming up. What are the things that we might wring out of this? Wring with a W, right? What might we squeeze out of this that would be sacred for us from also a faith point of view? What's the intersection here with how we understand religion, organized religion, belief in God, coming together in community?
That we're all created equal.
Okay. At least so says the sense, right?
This,
yeah.
but
Go ahead.
what I find interesting in 250 years, we still ponder these same thoughts. We still have not moved in certain directions. And that's very interesting. 250 years, we still question so many things.
Okay. And are we the only ones in the world doing that?
No, but the world looked to the United States as the ideal of freedom and equality. And that is why, I mean, I'm an infant. I came as a foreign student. My parents, we were fleeing communism, lost everything we had, went to Brazil. But my parents also knew when I went back to China. And that everybody was going to come to the United States for education. This is where in China, the word United States, the title is a beautiful country, and what the country of beauty. And so everybody came here with the idea that we'll be all inclusive, and we'll have an opportunity for education if you work hard enough and you have equal rights. Of course, that's not true. As Ruth has pointed out too, that we haven't moved ahead in many areas. Like it's just that that's the image. That's why we have so many people that want to come to the United States. Because they feel that it's safe here, they won't be murdered, they won't be, they'll be safe, but unfortunately, we can't take care of them as much as we would love to. But on the other hand, it's still the image in many, many countries. They think of us almost like in paradise.
Or at least we perceive them as thinking. Yeah. So differences, yes, Sammy, or no. Someone at home.
One thing that comes to mind when I look at this is that all the grievances that the king against the people could easily be said when people have grievances against our current government or any government. You know, it seems like it's just very hard to create a community that is truly self-governed and doesn't look for the people in charge to take most of the power, to make a lot of the decisions. We just kind of seem to always find ourselves falling back into that way of being. And and what does it take to get out of it? You know, so that's something I just noticed that I'm sure the people on January 6th thought, well, this is what our government's doing to me. And now this is what many people feel like the government is doing to us, throwing people out and making decisions that aren't representing me and the people, taking my stuff and in ways I don't want it. And they're not listening. And, I mean, you're right. It's kind of like, and why do we continue to fall into this? Because we just do, like no matter what but the goal is, kind of speaks to, I mean, even in our biblical text that we're going to look at is kind of the same thing, I think. Two
points I think that have been brought up, but thanks for bringing up January 6th. I think many of us, I'm not speaking for everybody's politics here, but many of us just assumed that was a band of ruffians, of thugs who were who were acting out of self-interest. There are other ways of looking at it. I think part of what this project is about is to get out of our silos and to try to understand the other person. I'm going to mention something now. It's hard for us to it's hard for us to read the comments at the same time. So probably best if you just speak up or raise your hand and call on you, because we don't have the ability to all of us to read those comments. So there were a few comments just now.
Yes, but they were about the sound.
Oh, great. Then you can do that anytime.
If anyone who speaks can talk a bit louder,
right. So we
that
have to
would be great.
project our voices. Right?
Use your outdoor voices indoor. Please.
Use your Pastor Jane voices.
Yeah, channel me a little bit, not too much.
Okay, so to understand the different aspects, I want to mention something that I often quote from Professor Avi Ravitsky of Hebrew University, a philosopher, a scholar of philosophy, who said already in the 90s, late 90s, he said like this. He said, there are three things we want to think of in a good society. We want to think of tolerance, pluralism, and openness. And excuse me if you've heard this before, but it's key to what I think study is about. Tolerance is when I have my view and you have your view, and we don't kill each other. We don't throw things. We don't, we don't bash down the walls of the cow, whatever it is. We don't kill each other. That's tolerance. Think of how often people use the word tolerance instead of lifting it up as such a great accomplishment. Now, tolerance. That's tolerance. Pluralism is when I have my views. Pastor Jane's of Methodist, she has her views, her Torah, I have my Torah. And I understand that for her, that's the truth. Tolerance is when, oh, they're wrong, but I'm going to tolerate. Pluralism is you have your truth, I have my truth, and we respect each other's space. But what Ravitsky asks us to do is to be open. Openness is when I visit the Methodist theology of Pastor Jane as a rabbi, and she visits the rabbinic writings of my world, and we look for things that we might take off the shelf. You know, what can we adopt? What at least to consider? That's openness, and to openly consider the mindset of those that rebelled or whatever happened on January 6th without in any way condoning violence, without in any way saying I agree, but to try what's going on there and what's going on with the other half of this country in general, because we kind of been divided or divide ourselves into half. So that's one kind of ground rule, I think, that which is a good thing for us to think about. The other one is what Jane just mentioned now. It seems to be happening all the time, this reassessing. And that's why we brought the text afterwards that comes after this from the book of Samuel. Because perhaps this is a human condition. Maybe this is part of our hard wiring. So if we continue to go around and somebody would like to read a few lines from
My turn.
Okay, but in a loud voice, Gary, okay?
When Samuel grew old, he appointed his sons judges over Israel. The name of his first son was Joel. Second son's name was
Abijah.
Abijah. They sat as judges in Beersheba, but his sons did not follow his ways. They were bent to gain. They accepted bribes and they were subservient to justice.
And once again, Samuel is the priest at the temple. So this is before Israel has any sort of political organization besides Samuel, who is sorts of operates as the person who dictates what God says are the laws and that people follow. So I just wanted, because some of us are not all that.
So after the 5 books of Moses comes Joshua, which is the Israelites coming into the battles to settle the land and to eject the Canaanites who were there, at least on paper. That's how it's presented. It was never happened. It never really worked. Not all the land was emptied of the Canaanites, and there were battles still to fight. The next book is Judges, which are a series of episodes of different charismatic leaders who led certain tribes or groups of tribes, clusters of tribes in different battles against different enemies. Wasn't all of Israel, but the bottom line of the book of Judges is at every step of the way, the editor lets us know that the people,
they were nuts.
Yeah, the people of Israel, when they believed in God and did what God wanted, they were victorious. And when they're not, they fell into the hands of the enemy. And the bottom line at the end of the book of Judges is this is a mess. This is not working. These were in the days, this is a quote, these were the days when there was no king in Israel. So you're led by the editor of the Hebrew Bible to go on to say, okay, then what next? And then comes Samuel, who is a prophet, charismatic prophet with God's mouthpiece. At the temple, there was a corrupt
his sons.
Well, there's actually Eli. Eli had corrupt.
Oh, Eli, that's
Eli
right.
is the priest at the time. And that's the story of Hannah, who, anyway, Eli's sons were corrupt. They were, taking the best of the pieces from the sacrifices. And then, parallel to that, we have Samuel, who, his sons were also not. In other words, so the hereditary thing wasn't working in that way. And yet we have this thing that's coming up right now.
Okay.
Good. So this is before Saul. Yes.
I just happened to glance at the screen. I
Yeah.
don't know who was asking this, but somebody wants to know how to raise their hand.
Yeah. Oh, there is that choop check, but it's not just wave your hand in the air. Would somebody like to say something? Okay.
Yeah, I was just
Oh, please
do
go
it
ahead.
like this.
Oh, great. Yeah, that's great.
I thought there was a way you could do it, through the.
There it is.
There it is, but
Madalena can message you directly to tell you how to do that.
Okay,
Okay,
great.
Madalena?
Thanks.
Okay, yes, yes. If you want to talk, you can also send me a message, and if you don't see how to do it.
Okay, but in the meantime, Randall, did you want to say something?
Yeah. I find the Declaration of Independence very interesting. I'm gonna have to read through the entire document because, as an African American, it doesn't apply to us at all, because we weren't afforded any of those freedoms, and definitely not the pursuit of happiness. So I live my life, as you were saying, Rabbi, just being open, honest, treating everybody the same. I try to live the way Jesus would want me to, and so I don't really see the Declaration of Independence as part of my life. I live my life based on, we're all created equal, and that's how we should act in our everyday lives.
Randall, I just wanted to add, did you hear my sermon on Sunday about the pursuit of happiness?
Yes,
What
I
is
did.
the pursuit of happiness? What is the pursuit of happiness? You
To me,
remember?
the pursuit.
What was it for the founding fathers? You remember what we talked about? What it really meant? What we assume it means and what it really meant?
No, I can't. Right offhand, I can't remember.
It means to live a life of stoic virtue. It's to live a virtuous life and to continue to pursue becoming a better person, character development.
Yeah. Okay,
so
yes, I remember.
That's something actually I think it's important, because that's something for us all to, like, regardless of whether we're happy or not, or we have the things that we think make us happy. That's not what was important to the founding fathers, was to have a place where you can continue to grow as a person. I just wanted to just so because that's what you're doing, Han. So you are pursuing happiness as the founding fathers would have thought.
Yeah.
So regardless.
I try to.
You do, Han, you do.
Thanks.
And that's where we're going. In a few minutes, we'll get to that aspect of it. But just back to the thing is this a human condition?
Right.
This constantly complaining, kvetching. Kvetch, you know the word kvetch?
Yeah.
It's a good word. Constantly kvetching about them here. So Samuel set it up. There's got to be some sort of the editor set it up and said, nobody can follow in Samuel's footsteps. Who's going to lead the people? This is before David, before Saul, before any kings. Okay, and as we can continue the reading now, second paragraph in 1 Samuel 8.
All the elders of Israel assembled and came to Samuel at Ramah. And they said to him, "You have grown old, and your sons have not followed your ways. Therefore, appoint a king for us to govern us like all other nations." Samuel was displeased, and they said, "Give us a king to govern us."
Samuel prayed to the Lord, and the Lord replied to Samuel, "Heed the demand of the people in everything they say to you. For it is not you that they have rejected, it is me they have rejected as their king. Like everything else they have done ever since I brought them out of Egypt to this day, forsaking me and worshiping other gods. So they are doing to you. Heed their demand, but warn them solemnly, and tell them about the practices of any king who will rule over them."
Samuel reported all the words of the Lord to the people who were asking him for a king. He said, "This will be the practice of the king who will rule over you. He will take your sons and appoint them as his charioteers and horsemen, and they will serve as outrunners for his chariots. He will appoint them as his chiefs of thousands and of fifties, and they will have to plow his fields, reap his harvest, and make his weapons and the equipment for his chariots. He will take your daughters as perfumers, cooks, and bakers. He will seize your choice fields, vineyards, and olive groves and give them to his couriers. He will take a tenth part of your grain and vintage and give it to his eunuchs and couriers. He will take your male and female slaves, your choice young men, and your asses, and put them to work for him. He will take a tenth part of your flocks, and you shall become his slaves.
Okay, no, let's go on to finish it. It's the page that has C is the second paragraph.
Oh, still, okay.
I'll put numbers next time in the pages. It starts with the day will come.
The day will come when you cry out because of the king whom yourselves have chosen, and the Lord will not answer you on that day. But the people would not listen to Samuel's warning. No, they said, we must have a king over us, that we may be like all the other nations, that our king rule over us and go out at our head and fight our battles. When Samuel heard it all the people said, he reported it to the Lord. And the Lord said to Samuel, heed their demands and appoint a king for them. Samuel then said to the men of Israel, all of you go home.
So I don't know how well known this text is, but as Christians, as Jews, as Buddhists, as people relating to this text, at least knowing it's sacred. And by the way, what you said, Randall, beforehand, that raises the question, is this therefore not a sacred text? And a sacred American text, if it's not, doesn't apply to all Americans, that's, we're kind of relating to this with some sort of holiness that we're studying it together. But this creation, this understanding of the kingship, what do we think about it now? What do we as people of faith, how do we relate to this text?
Or what's he saying in it? What's going on in this text?
It's interesting that God told him, you're gonna become enslaved to this guy.
Okay.
He's gonna take everything from you and you're gonna have to do what he says. And you need to know that.
And they still
want it.
They're not bothered. So what does that mean? Oh, yeah, go ahead, Tom.
I would argue that it's not a sacred text because that where it says all men are created equal, what they were talking about was white male landowner. And basically this was a piece of rhetoric, piece of propaganda, the purpose of this, and it was to sell other countries why the United States was going to war with Britain. So that's why the whole thing reads like an indictment of King George. It's because they're trying to communicate to other people, why are we doing this thing? But I don't think in terms of guiding this country, I don't think this has much value personally.
Okay. Does it have value? Two questions. Does it have value for us to look at it and respond to it? And also, does the text from Samuel have value?
Absolutely, it has value to look at it because it is treated as sacred. And questioning whether that's true or not is vital to do. And Samuel, yeah, I think it's important to look at it because there are factions of our government right now who basically want a king. They're moving in that same direction. Some of the top advisors are saying that democracy doesn't work anymore, that we need a king. So yes, I think both of these are very important to look at them. And no, I don't think that the Declaration of Independence is sacred.
Okay, so I'm not going to ask you because as a Buddhist and a Methodist, but as a Buddhist, you have a parallel tradition. For those here who've considered themselves to be devout, serious Christians, is the text from Samuel sacred? And if so, what does that mean? I mean, if I was to ask you, is the Bible sacred? What would you usually say? No, you wouldn't say yes? You have a different opinion.
No,
Oh.
I'm
Oh,
pondering.
you say ponder. Okay,
I'm
sorry.
pondering.
I'm well known to put people on the spot. I apologize. Yeah, go ahead.
I would say yes, because this text can share light on what we're experiencing and we can learn from it.
Okay. You wanted to say over here?
I think it's similar to myth. Myth speaks truth often without fact. It's not based on fact, but the story conveys a truth.
Okay.
And I think it's important too to remember that this text is the beginning of what they call the histories, 1st and 2nd Samuel, 1st and 2nd Kings, which go through then all the kings. This Israel wasn't listening. God says, you're not going to want a king. You're going to come to me and you're going to say, you know what? That king has taken everything I want. Can you please take him away? And God says, on that day, I'm going to be washing my hair. You know, like it's like God never says, I'm not going to help. But God really doesn't want the people to have a king. And yet they do. And then we get 4 chapters, long chapters of all the kings that Israel had.
4 books.
4 books, yeah. 4 books. And each and every one at some point or other is a disaster. It, like, doesn't listen to God. And that's, you know, it's a very critical, like the Bible is very critical of monarchy. And yet it just keeps going on and on and on and on.
And it ends with the destruction of the temple and the exile. Yes.
Yeah, I was thinking, why would you want a king? You gotta give up all this stuff, but still you want a king, you want to be led. You know, and it's just, I would not want a king. If I have to give up all my possessions, the way that they're described here, it's just too, I can't understand that.
So there's a dissonance, and the dissonance that Tom brought up vis-a-vis the Declaration of Independence, others here as well, that we all feel, especially when we got to that paragraph about Native Americans. There's a dissonance between the text and Samuel, like, really? Why would you ever say yes to that? Of course, we're speaking from the fruits of democracy, so to speak. So, and you go ahead.
Well, I was gonna say, and it's interesting because I was watching the miniseries John Adams again, just because it was great. But you know, there was a real debate after the end of the war about how much authority, like who's going to run the country now and how much authority we're going to have. John Adams thought they should have, they call him your elected majesty. Like he really felt like you needed a really strong executive handling everything. He didn't want mob rule, which he thought the Senate would create. Then you have Jefferson that's like, no, we need the people to decide things, and a weak executive. So there was just a very interesting debate going on about these things, even at the beginning of the country.
The definition of a sacred text is really what we're talking about.
Right.
If this Bible here is sacred and we don't throw it around, we don't burn it, you know, what we treat it with respect. Does that mean that we believe everything in there is history? Your answer, of course, I think we all agree. No, it's like mythology in that way. There's a message, but it's not a historical truth as far as the historiosity. It's historical in that it teaches us what certain men, unfortunately only men, thought hundreds and hundreds of years ago. The other aspect of that, not just the truth aspect, is the authority aspect. And back to both Randall and Tom made this point. I don't, if you see it as for what it was historically, the Declaration of Independence, as a piece of propaganda or a declaration, as it says, and not necessarily a piece, an authoritative piece. In other words, the fact that it's in a sacred text, and I'm using the word sacred, not everybody would agree, doesn't mean that it's authoritative. Doesn't mean that you have to do. If it says in the Torah that someone who doesn't keep the laws of the Sabbath should be stoned, or the young man who eats too much and drinks too much and rebels against his parents in Deuteronomy, that they're the first ones to stone him, actually, to kill him, that doesn't mean that I think that that's what we should do. It still remains sacred. Now I'm just speaking for myself, in that I want to be inspired by that text. And sometimes I'm inspired to do exactly the opposite. So for me, reading the difficult passages of the Declaration of Independence or reading Samuel, and we purposely took those bookends from a chronological point of view, is that text has the ability, text that we take seriously has the ability to stir up the conversation within us, to inspire us. To inspire us, though, sometimes to say, that's exactly what I'm not going to do. And I think,
and that's what parents are for, as much as to teach us what to do.
Yeah.
Just so you know.
And it's sacred because we take it seriously, and because it's part of a tradition. In this case, The Declaration of Independence for me is sacred because it has the opportunity of bringing people of different backgrounds, far wider than the different backgrounds that we have here, bringing together in a conversation to inspire us. Okay, so what do we do now? Any comments or reactions to that before we go?
And I do think too, just from the study that I've done, founding fathers knew this, that even the most aspirational parts of the beginning of the Declaration was purely aspirational. Like they knew, Jefferson knew this was someday all people would, you know what I mean? That the situation on the ground was such that it was imperfect for sure at the beginning. And the only way that the states, the colonies were gonna come together and agree that they wanted independence is that they had to compromise with the slavery issue. Otherwise, this South Carolina, Georgia, they would have said, no, we're not part of this. And then there just wouldn't have been the largesse for the independence to have taken place. So it was a very imperfect from the beginning. And I think that was, no.
Okay. Megan, did you want to say something? Did I see your hand up? No, okay.
So
yes.
What I'm thinking is it's reflective of the reality of the time that it was written, right? In Samuel's time, we can all look back 250 years ago, 2,000 years ago and say, what the heck were they thinking? Just like people 250 years from now are going to think what we're talking about is wacko. And how could we be so blind as if we did not see this? So I think it's contextual and it's inspirational. And I think just back to 1974, as recent as 1974, 3 big things happened in 1974. Nixon resigned and Watergate was a scandal that brought down the presidency. That no longer is happening. Hank Aaron broke Babe Ruth's record. And the third thing, for some of the women, all of the women in this room, the Equal Credit Opportunity Act was passed.
Yeah.
In 1974, prior to that, a married woman could not apply for her own separate personal credit card without written consent from her husband, nor could she have her own separate personal bank account without written consent of her husband.
I'm sorry, I left the country around that time and wasn't too aware. I'm flabbergasted.
Right.
I had no idea.
Right, so as recent, we keep evolving, but we keep slipping back. You evolve and we slip back. So what they're saying here feels very contemporary because people are wanting to give up their rights to a certain patriarchal leader. I think,
strong man.
yeah. And I think it's history keeps repeating itself, in other words, and just 1974, we couldn't have a bank account.
That's great. What a great contribution to the conversation.
Ruth, that's what Ruth Ginsburg fought for. So why she became famous. She was the lawyer who fought for that in front of the Supreme Court.
Right.
In
1974, the Equal Credit Opportunity Act was passed.
My dad died in 1969, and my mom had to fight the banks to be able to get the things she needed to continue our family.
My dad had to co-sign for me to get a credit card.
You were 22?
I was 20 when that happened. So 2 years later, I could get it, to have anything from them.
I think that it makes me wonder, are people really just sheep? Do they really just want somebody else to make the decisions? So that they don't have to be responsible for them, and they don't have to, if something goes haywire, well, he made that decision, not me. And I think that's a big part of it. People are just sheep.
Anything from home? I before we go on to the Methodist.
I think there's an additional piece of this. It's also worth, because it wasn't that God said, you don't need a king. He's like, I want to be your king. Like that was the issue. God is like, I want to be your king. I don't want the human king is going to completely pervert what kingship is about. Now, that can easily, of course, get caught up when you have a theocracy then that says, well, these are the people that the king has chosen, that God the king has chosen, we need to listen to them. But there's that really interesting threading a needle, I think, like, because we do, as people of faith, to some extent, give the message of, follow Jesus, follow God. We give God our royal authority. But it's interesting, like, how does that then trickle down in how we deal with the authority of the system that we're in, that we want to change, and why we want to change it. And it can get mixed up a lot as we're, what did Jesus call us? We're sheep. And that's a good thing, right? Like I'm the shepherd and you're the sheep. So it's not necessarily that being a sheep is bad. It's like knowing who your shepherd is and how that journey with the shepherd, and how the journey with the shepherd intersects then with the material world that confuses.
But how is a shepherd appointed?
Well, the shepherd is Jesus.
No, but I mean, like you two, you are shepherding your congregation, right? So, you're in charge, like, somebody is always at the pinnacle, right? So.
Yeah, and that's I just find that to be an interesting intersection of like, what is leadership? What is good leadership? What is strong leadership? And then there's all good and bad of all of it. And how do you get everybody on the same page about what that's going to be? You know what I mean? So what we're talking about is just this wide range of possibilities, which is what makes this kind of stuff interesting.
Perhaps there's little L leadership, which is what we do, what you do in your life, I would imagine, family level, business, whatever it might be. And there's big L leadership, which is King / Jesus / God.
The Torah.
Yeah, the big authorities that really have power over life and death, all possessions. And this is interesting, as I'm listening to this as a Jew, I'm thinking of the failure of the kingship. And then still the prophets of Second Temple are saying, but don't worry, it's going to come back. Somebody from the house of David is going to come and rise and be that king again. And still today in some Orthodox circles, not in my world, are still waiting for the day that the Mashiach, the Messiah, will come, who will be a man, a real flesh and blood man from the house of David, who will lead the armies of Israel to victory over the world, and that all the world not will become Jewish, but will believe in one God. And then that's the things to come. That's the utopia of coming, forthcoming. But Christianity, regardless of how you see it as historical, took a turn and said, let's take that kingship and let's elevate it to that direct connection with God or indirect connection with God through Jesus. Jesus is the king. Jesus, the first chapter of Matthew, right? Jesus stems from David. That's the purpose of that chapter, one of the purposes. Jesus is that man who is essentially not just a man. It's taking all this that's happening that we see in Samuel and elevating it to a direct relationship with God. And Judaism chose a different way to do it. That's something for us to I'm beginning that conversation. I'm constantly surprised of what I understand about Judaism from just a side remark with Jane made now about, who is the king? So one of the things that came up when we were looking at the declaration beforehand was this, who exactly is a man? That kind of came up. Who gets to be, who is it talking about? It's not talking about, as Randall and other folks said, it's not talking about every human being in this country. So who gets to be that person? And how might we compare the Declaration of Independence to a biblical text, as we did with Samuel when it came to leadership? How might we, when it comes to rights, individual rights? And so therefore, I'm gonna ask, we'll skip over for now C, D, E, and go to F, which is under the image. The other side, keep going, turn over, there you go. At the bottom there. And to save space, I brought,
Gospel according to Matthew.
I brought the quote from Matthew, so I didn't have to bring two verses from the Torah, and also to show the commonality, right? If whoever's in line, would you read the famous passage from that?
The Gospel according to Matthew, chapter 22, verses 34 to 40. Hearing that Jesus had silenced the Sadducees, the Pharisees got together. One of them, an expert in the law, tested him with this question: Teacher, which is the greatest commandment in the law? Jesus replied, love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind. Deuteronomy 6:5. This is the first and greatest commandment, and the second is like it. Love your neighbor as yourself. From Leviticus 19, verse 18. All the law and the prophets hang on these two commandments.
So just reminding people, Jesus is quoting from the Torah, two central things. It's not only Jesus in his time doing that, lifting up those two aspects, the vertical aspect of life, humanity and God, but the horizontal aspect as well, human beings and human beings. And they live, they're part of it, you can't separate the two. Even though they're in two different places in the Torah, two different books, one in Deuteronomy and one in Leviticus, Jesus comes, and this is the beautiful thing from a midrashic point of view. Jesus, the rabbi, comes and says, no, those two things are married, are joined at the hip together. And it wasn't, as I mentioned, it wasn't just Jesus having that conversation. You flip the page, not flip the page, go on to the next one. Yeah, flip the page. This is a tradition from.
Which number is that?
It's G. This is a tradition from 2nd, 3rd century of the Common Era, rabbinic collection of interpretations on the book of Leviticus. I'll read. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. That's the quote. That's the prompt. Rabbi Akiva, R is rabbi. Rabbi Akiva, one of the most famous talked about rabbis in the 2nd century. He says, this is an all-embracing principle of the Torah. Kind of to say, you don't have to worry about the 612 other commandments. We have a tradition, there's 613 commandments in the Torah. You don't have to worry about the other. The one that focuses on everything is, you shall love your neighbor as yourself, which is an amazing thing to say. Not eating pork or not lighting a match on the Sabbath, that's not what, if all this stuff is supposed to bring you together with your fellow human being, if it's separating you, then something's off. So it's a serious statement here, which is not looked at enough, I think, by Jews. But in the good rabbinic tradition, there's always an ethic. There's always a debate. There is always a debate. Sometimes it has 2, 3, 4 sides to it, but there's at least 2 sides to it. The other, Ben Azai, who's one of his contemporaries, says, no. It's this verse. This is the verse you would never expect from Genesis 5. This is the numeration of the generations of Adam. That's after you have the story of Adam and Eve, the garden, the serpent, Cain and Abel, that unfortunate stuff. Then you have this, the editor of the book of Genesis kind of sums up, says, these are the generations. Sometimes here it says numerations, but often the translation, these are the generations of Adam. And then it goes on to list all of Adam's children. Of course, we would say today Adam and Eve, but that's another issue of sexism. Why is that important? What is Ben Azai saying? Well, can you imagine what he's saying? Why is that verse, which is from a boring part of the Torah, which is the genealogy lists, right? Nobody wants to do those. What is he saying? That each and every human being comes from the same Abba and Ima, the same daddy and mommy, which means that everybody is created equal. Now, if it was me, I would have chosen perhaps the verse in first chapter of Genesis that God created humanity in God's own image. But actually, I get this. Nobody's family is better than another. Nobody's blood is better than another blood. There is no nobility. There is no caste system that really makes sense. What Ben Azai is saying is that the whole point of the Torah is to bring about equality. And so where are we with these two? Whether it's Jesus, whether it's Rabbi Akiva, whether it's Ben Azai, these quotes and the Declaration of Independence. Does that help us understand?
And I think too, I've been thinking about a recent article that I read about you shall love your neighbor as yourself. Actually, I don't know if it's Hebrew or Greek or whatever, but the understanding of love here also can mean understand. And that we can really only understand or love our neighbor until we understand them. So again, this is a call, like we're all the same, like as opposed to like othering people. To understand them is, once we understand them, the idea is we'll see how we're, like kind of we'll be able to pick things off of each other's shelves and see how we're connected.
Comments or questions?
But that this idea of like a king, an authority at the top is making this sort of idyllic, the way we're created, impossible. When you have someone in charge that's making a decision and it's all about empowering them and disempowering others, that's where the break is, and that's where the world that God created is not possible.
Unless you think that the king is going to bring that about.
Yeah, he's been designed by God to do that.
And you as an individual will pay your taxes for that to happen by giving your firstborn to the castle, to the crops and everything. It's a little twisted, I think, for us to understand, but maybe that's,
Well, then that's kind of what, like throughout history, I mean, the Christian history is all about kings and peasants and terrible the real cut. There's no understanding that we're all from the same family. It's been very, integrated into non-biblical thinking.
So now the question is, how do we get there as individuals, as communities? What are the different methods that have been offered, if I can use that word?
Wow. Which, and so, would you like me to speak to that, Rabbi?
Yeah.
So this kind of comes, I thought this would be interesting for us to look at, because, and for those of you who were in worship on Sunday, when I shared what Ben Franklin's list of virtues that you want to work on.
That would be E on your sheets.
So where it says Ben Franklin list of virtues, like that these are the behaviors that you want to ascribe to, because once you're living like your inner life and your outer life comports with this, you are capable of being in community with others because you're not taking from that. You're taking what you need, but you're not going overboard. You're always thinking about how I can be decent to the other person. What can I just cut off in my own self so I can lift somebody else up? I mean, the idea of temperance, silence, speak not but what may benefit others. We live that way. Like, what kind of community would we have? Be in order, put everything in its place, but don't spend too much time on things that don't need that time. Do what you said you'll do. Only use what you need, and be sure to waste nothing, and just use what you need and make it available to others. Don't waste your time. Be sure you're doing something positive. I think it's a little, here they are. Be sincere in what you say and what you do. Don't do things to bad people, and also do the good things that is your duty to do. That's what justice was for him. Moderation, avoid extremes. Be sure to good hygiene and everything. Stay tranquil. Do not be disturbed at trifles or when things come along that you don't expect. Find a way to be tranquil about it. Be chaste. Don't get involved with people in ways that are going to hurt you or hurt others. And be humble. Imitate Jesus and Socrates. So this had nothing really to do with faith, but they were like choices that Ben Franklin said is a really important choices. And when you make these choices, that's what leads to true happiness. And that's what the pursuit of happiness. Of course, it's the pursuit of it. You're never going to achieve it, but we're always going to pursue it. And even have this little, when he was young, he had a whole little checklist of all the different virtues, and he was going to do, like, 1 week, he was going to work on temperance, just really focus on that, and then just kind of note how other things at the end of the day he was also living out. And then the next week he was going to really work on silence. So it was very much an ongoing inner project. And the idea that this kind of attention to who we are and how we are with one another is what's necessary for democracy, for community to really work. Because when you're living in this world, you're not about overpowering somebody else and getting what you want, screwing somebody else. You know, all those kind of ego things that a king does. This is the opposite of what a monarchy looks like, you know, a monarchy mentality. And what I find interesting is that in very much the same way, John Wesley's method, and which is where Methodism comes from. People oftentimes think that it is about you know, how we establish our organization, but it was really about how am I behaving, and what is and not how am I behaving, and how's my spiritual life enabling me to behave in the way that I was created. And I don't know if it's here, but there was like the main things that you were to do as Methodists.
Not D.
But D.
Private devotion.
Yeah, those are yeah. So am I consciously creating an impression that thank you, that I'm better than I really am? Am I a hypocrite? Am I honest in all my acts? Do I confidentially pass on to another what was told to me in confidence? Can I be trusted? Am I proud? How do I spend my spare time? And all these kinds of, did I disobey God in anything? Is Christ real to me? Do I grumble or complain constantly? Is there anyone whom I fear, dislike, disown, criticize, hold resentment toward? If so, what am I doing about it? So this very much, we have this kind of stoic sensibility, which was also matched, and it's not really in here so much, but the method was all about pray regularly. Get up at 5 in the morning and you pray. Then at 7, you start with your Bible study. And once a week you meet and you go over all these questions. And I've got a little, I can share with you, like there was a little report card that the ordained clergy who came by every 3 months and would take a note about how you're doing with your prayer and your study and your being out in the world and being a good citizen and helping the poor and all the different kinds of things. It was very, there was a real emphasis on staying focused on your personal development and how your faith life was engaging you to be a better person always. And that's one of the reasons that Methodism became a very popular denomination once the revolution was over. John Wesley was not, he did not like the Revolutionary War. He thought it was distracted from discipleship. He felt like he was always he didn't want to break from the Anglican Church. The Methodist denomination in America came about begrudgingly, and Methodists before the Revolution, and maybe even after, got persecuted because they were loyalists, because they were people who felt the war they had nothing to do with their faith life and discipleship and this and that. Neither here nor there. Once the revolution was over, this kind of attitude and this work was what became very popular, because it was very much linked to this idea that we are here, and the only way this is going to work is if we become better people. We ever keep working at becoming better people. And that, unfortunately, it's hard work, and it gets lost when suddenly you have a lot of money and you can buy things, and that becomes more important than being frugal or whatever it is. You get jealous, you see other people getting ahead of you, and you want what they have, and the church becomes about that, gets all freaked out about how big we are and how successful we are, and what do we need to do to become more big and successful, and whatever it is. Just some thoughts about how I see a lot of this kind of translating into who we are as Methodists, who John Wesley envisioned us to be as Methodists. Because the Methodist Church grew up the same time of the Revolution. It was all from the 18th century. That's when John Wesley was around. And it very much is dependent on your capacity as a human being to work on yourself and to not expect somebody else to take care of it for you, which is what the king would do, right? The king would take care of everything, and then he starts, you sell your soul.
So these are kind of the building blocks of democracy. This is one way of looking at it. You cannot have a functioning society built on justice if we get past all the injustice that's reflected. But without individuals being in order, there has to be an inner order as well. Many of us spent greater part of last year studying, some of us on the screen, but in Or Hamidbar, studying the book of Proverbs from the beginning to the end, line by line. It took about 11 months and a weekly study. And a lot of the things, I mean, Dan, others, I think they sound familiar, many of these things, both in Ben Franklin and also in John Wesley's words. There's a lot of the wisdom tradition.
Yes.
Of Israel went on to be accepted in Christianity as well. It would be interesting for us to learn about that kind of wisdom literature in Islam as well, how that is taken out of the Quran. That's something missing in our community here now. We're going to be working on that, particularly come fall. We're in touch now. Jane and I are in touch with a local imam who's relatively new here, and we're looking towards broadening our interfaith definition. So the tradition of wisdom literature is in here. The idea of what you do every day is reflected, very much reflected in traditional Judaism. Orthodox Judaism is from the moment you are alert, not even before you open your eyes, there's something to do. And there's no, I still do some of it, but some people do it by the book. Everything from the moment you awake to the moment you go to sleep at night. It's all governed, and even that wasn't working in the 18th, 19th century. There grew a movement we call it the Musar movement. Musar is ethics. This movement, it wasn't that widespread. It was in certain areas of Eastern and Central Europe, and young men would also have these kinds of lists of what they were going to work on. And you don't go on to the next characteristic until you finish that one. And some people would do these in couples as well. These two men would check each other. So a lot of this resonates.
And I just want to say one more thing, that the difference with what Ben Franklin's doing from what the Methodists or the Jewish community or whatever was, probably most religious communities, is that they believed that you don't need a supernatural being to make it possible. That they believe humans are born with a capacity. God, put us into the world and gave us the capacity to reason and the capacity to take care of ourselves. And so we don't need to depend on some God or somebody else's God. That's where you get the freedom of religion too. It's that all of us are capable inherently, because we're human beings, of doing this. Now, we may say, no, we need God. There's an interesting conversation there. But the people that brought the Declaration of Independence truly believe that human beings are capable in and of themselves to do this sort of work.
Maybe we end with two quotes, one from John Wesley himself in C. And because we're just, so if somebody would read that, or somebody on Dan, you want to read C for us?
Okay. You are never in your lives in so critical a situation as you are at this time. It is your part to be peacemakers, to be loving and tender to all, but to addict yourselves to no party. In spite of all solicitations of rough or smooth words, say not one word against one or the other side. Keep yourselves pure. Do all you can to help and soften all, but beware how you adopt another's jar.
That means jargon. Or jar.
So how do we feel about this?
I think this is great. I've loved this time that we spent together. It really makes me really think about, how we are as human beings, and just, all of this is something for all of us to just take in, and like Pastor said, just, be the best people that we could possibly be. And it's a struggle. I mean, I remember years ago, I really struggled with, being nice to my neighbor and, whatever they had, I felt like I should have. And, it took me a lot of years to get to a point where, I was happy with who I am. And when I became happy with who I am, it allowed me to share the happiness that I feel with other people. And that's where I think we're missing a lot of that in this country, in the world, because people just aren't generally happy people, and if people could just be happy with themselves and content, with themselves, I think that it allows us to be able to spread those same things to other people.
Thank you, Randall.
Yeah, please go, Karen.
I would like to share that as Pastor Jane, who taught me that maybe you don't like what other people think and how they act, but it has nothing to do with you not liking that person. So it's the ideas that you may disagree on ideas, politically or whatever, but the thing is that is a friend of yours if you want to. And I have found in pieces of my sleeping patterns a lot when I work and concerned about the cause of things that are causing misery for people in our country now, rather than who these people are. So I love them anyway, and we may disagree, and I go to coffee with people that are staunch, really staunch opposites of what I believe. But it's really interesting in these coffees, I've learned something. I learned that when they express themselves to me, I do understand that's where they're coming from. And when I express myself to them, which may be totally opposite of what they believe in, we've all become friends then. And so it's not the person you hate, it's the ideas that they may believe in or some actions to take that is hurting other people. But I don't hate those people out there that, ICE or whatever, because it's not, it's the idea. That you work for your ideas, I work for my ideas, but I don't hate you. And it's very interesting, it's made a lot of peace among some of my friends who had strong, really strong feelings.
And I think that's actually the undercurrent of why it's so important to be open to all the different opinions, like in the Jewish tradition, where it's always you debate things. There's always two opinions, because then and there's a spiritual practice I know in Buddhism to like debate an idea, because the idea, as I understand it, Tom, and you can correct me if I'm incorrect, is that when you're debating ideas, you actually form there's a really special bond, a love that you discover when you start to hear one another and let go of the idea that they have to agree with you with everything. There's a vulnerability and a relationship that's created that can only be created when we're open to one another like that. So it's actually it's really healthy to have discussions, not the way we see them in the news, which are all about hating each other, but they really should be about like, how can we share these ideas and find in between maybe what the real truth is, which is really all about love.
And one more suggestion from 20th century Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel, who some of you may remember we did a book study once, his book, The Sabbath. And we'll end with this. Wanda, would you like to read this section of J? The last one on the page? Just unmute yourself first. There you had it. Click one more time.
Unmute, correct?
There you go.
Jay?
Yes.
You got me. Okay, and Jay, where's Jay? Okay, Jay, all right. Above all, the prophets remind us of the moral state of people. Few are guilty, but all are responsible. If we admit that the individual is in some measure conditioned or affected by the spirit of society. All individuals' crimes disclose society's corruption. In a community not indifferent to suffering, uncompromisingly impatient, but cruelty and falsehood, continually concerned for God and every man, crime would be infrequent rather than common. That's powerful.
I would encourage everybody to take these sheets home. If you have time, go over, formulate some questions. And next week we'll come with we haven't decided exactly which one we're going to do.
Maybe both, we'll kind of see.
Yeah.
We're gonna look at maybe the two poems, Emma Lazarus's.
But we'll let you know. We'll let you know in an
Yeah.
email. And we'll continue the
And
conversation.
there'll probably some additional texts.
Yeah.
That we'll have, and then we'll have it, so you'll know what to look for. And I took a picture of everybody, not just to show for the church on Sunday, but also that I have all your names and I can form I can work with Madalena to form a class list.
Well, thank you all at home for being here and dealing with the separation.
Thank
between-
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yay!
Thank you. Yay.
Thank you.
We are the world, we are the children. All right, that's our song, going for the song.
Pastor Jane has some sheets with hymns that might be interesting to you. I think some Methodist hymns.
Yeah, well, maybe I'll bring them next time we can talk about them, because I think you can learn also a lot about Methodist theology by looking at Charles Wesley's hymns, because they really reflect a lot of it. But maybe we'll look at that a little bit. Or you know what, I'll give them to you now, and then maybe we'll talk about this a little bit.
And thank you, Madalena, for facilitating.
Kind of like, because you think of.
Yes, thank you.
See you
And I'll
next
send
week.
those
Bye. Bye.
Looking at these three hymns and kind of what they are saying about God and community and humankind and all that sort of thing.
It's interesting to me that